Stop everything and listen. Because what's happening right now is not just news. It's a wake-up call. Russia is crumbling on the battlefield, losing ground faster than anyone imagined. And Japan's yen is plunging to historic lows, sending shockwaves through global markets. Do you feel the gravity of this?
You need to know this now, because the consequences hit your wallet, your job, your future, and the very balance of power in the world. This isn't a distant story, it's here, it's real, and it's unfolding at lightning speed. By watching this report, you'll understand the domino effect of these crises, how they are connected, and what they mean for every single person on this planet.
And it all starts here. Russia suffers its most destabilizing frontline losses in months, and the ripples are spreading faster than anyone predicted. Russia suffers its most destabilizing frontline losses in months. And if you're not paying attention right now, you're going to miss a moment that is reshaping the global landscape in real time.
This isn't speculation. This isn't rumor. This is what happens when a military that has been stretched thin, grinding through a prolonged conflict, suddenly hits a breaking point, one that exposes the weaknesses many analysts have warned about, but few expected to erupt this violently or this fast. What unfolded on the ground wasn't just another skirmish or routine exchange. It was a coordinated Ukrainian strike, executed with speed, precision, and a level of tactical synchronization that caught Russian forces completely off balance. Think about the psychological impact of that. A military that relies on the illusion of control suddenly loses it. And they lose it publicly. You can feel the shock vibrating through every official statement, every contradictory report from the region, every delayed acknowledgement coming out of Moscow.
When a state that projects strength starts mismatching its messaging with reality, it tells you one thing: they're scrambling. And that scramble is exactly what we're seeing now, because the Kremlin command fractures as rapid Ukrainian strikes overwhelm defenses.
This is where the story intensifies. Because battlefield losses are one thing, but structural cracks inside the command system, that is something entirely different inside any major power especially. One with rigid hierarchical control. Common breakdowns don't happen quietly. They produce panic, hesitation, conflicting orders, and rushed decision-making. What happens next is predictable. If you've studied the historical pattern, units retreat in disorganized waves, communication lines jam from overload, logistics collapse, and suddenly a loss isn't just a loss, it's a cascade. A single breach becomes a widening hole. A tactical setback becomes a political embarrassment, and a political embarrassment becomes a destabilizing force that ripples outward across the entire government. This is why the world is watching so closely right now, because when a military that has spent years trying to project power suddenly loses the ability to coordinate its own defense, it signals something much deeper. Exhaustion, overstretch, and the limits of force in a conflict that has dragged on far longer and cost far more than the Kremlin ever publicly admits. The Ukrainian strike didn't just hit targets on the ground. It hit the internal wiring of Russia's war machine. It exposed what happens when the F8 of competence cracks. And when those cracks appear, morale plummets. Soldiers on the front notice, officers notice. Allies and adversaries notice. And markets. Yes, markets notice too. Because instability like this does not stay contained, it radiates outward. You're seeing that right now as Russian officials rush to control the narrative while trying to restore order inside a command structure that clearly wasn't prepared for a strike of this magnitude. The timing could not be worse for Russia. Every country experiencing internal tension, external pressure, or economic fragility becomes especially vulnerable during moments like this, and Russia is no exception. The pressures have been building for months. Battlefield fatigue, rising casualty counts, sanctions, draining resources, and internal political factions quietly sharpening their knives. This moment, the rapid Ukrainian strike, the chaotic response, the fractured command, acts as the accelerant that brings those pressures to the surface. You can hear it in the tone of Russian state media. You can see it in their clipped, rushed statements. They're trying to maintain the narrative of stability. But when updates contradict each other, when officials issue explanations that feel improvised, when visible cracks appear in what is supposed to be a unified chain of command, that is not stability, that is damage control. And damage control on this scale always signals one thing behind the curtain: panic. What makes this moment even more significant is what it reveals about the shifting power dynamic of the conflict itself. Ukraine didn't just strike a position, they executed an operation that forced one of the world's largest militaries into defensive chaos. The psychological effect of that cannot be overstated. This is the kind of event that re-energizes one side and destabilizes the other. It lights up global intelligence channels. It forces military planners around the world to update their assessments. It shifts diplomatic calculations among nations that have been cautiously monitoring every change in the war's momentum. And Russia knows it. Inside the Kremlin, the narrative has always relied on showing total control, control over the military, control over information, control over outcomes. But moments like this pierce that illusion. They reveal vulnerability. They show the limits of centralized command under stress, and they raise questions inside Russia that its leadership does not want asked. Who's responsible for the failures? Who ignored warnings? Who miscalculated the risk? Who's losing control in systems like this? Blame doesn't fall downward. It spreads outward quickly, dangerously, unpredictably. This is why analysts are calling this one of Russia's most destabilizing losses in months. Not because of the territory involved or the number of units impacted, but because of what it symbolizes. It is a turning point that exposes structural instability, instability in command, instability in planning, instability in internal cohesion, and instability is the single most dangerous word in geopolitics. It signals uncertainty, and uncertainty forces even the most powerful governments into reaction mode. Combine that with the speed and precision of Ukraine's strike, and you see why defenses were overwhelmed. This wasn't just a tactical victory. It was a strategic shock. Russian forces were not prepared. Their command structure did not adapt fast enough. Their response was fragmented. And that fragmentation is the real story. Because in war, the moment a command structure fractures, the entire narrative begins to shift. Allies hesitate, opponents advance. Neutral states reevaluate their positions. Economies adjust to the risk. And the legitimacy of leadership comes under quiet, but serious questioning right now. That's exactly what's unfolding. A destabilizing military loss and a fractured command at the same time. This is not just news. It's a signal, a clear, loud, unavoidable indicator that Russia is entering a moment of vulnerability that could reshape the conflict, shift regional dynamics, and destabilize the Kremlin's internal grip in ways no one in Moscow wanted to confront this soon. Japan's yen collapses to multi-decade lows, triggering global market panic, and the reverberations are hitting every corner of the financial world. Investors are scrambling, trading floors are jittery, and analysts are scrambling to explain how quickly confidence in a major currency can evaporate. This isn't just a slow decline. This is a sudden, sharp plunge that undermines stability in a country that has long been seen as a pillar of economic reliability. Energy prices spike and import costs soar as the yen weakens, and global markets respond almost instantly. Every investor, every multinational, and every government watching this sees the same warning sign. Systemic stress is spreading energy and commodity prices. Spike as currency volatility accelerates, forcing markets into reactive mode and triggering waves of uncertainty. Oil, gas, metals, and critical imports are now far more expensive, feeding inflation pressures worldwide. Corporations adjusting for cost volatility struggle to stabilize budgets, while supply chains that rely on predictable currency strength begin to wobble. The speed and scale of these movements are unprecedented, and central banks are on high alert. weighing emergency interventions to prevent further financial shock. Investors flee, markets skyrate, and the perception of stability that the yen once carried has evaporated almost overnight, leaving policymakers and global investors racing to contain the fallout. Investors flee Asian markets amid fears of a wider financial contagion, and the panic is spreading faster than analysts predicted. Stock exchanges from Tokyo to Hong Kong are experiencing sudden sell-offs as traders try to protect assets from cascading losses. Geopolitical instability intensifies as Russian setbacks shake regional power balances, compounding the uncertainty already created by Japan's yen collapse. Nations and corporations alike are reassessing risk, redirecting capital, and bracing for unexpected shocks.
Every headline, every chart, and every market signal is now scrutinized, amplifying volatility, while confidence erodes across borders, creating a feedback loop of tension that threatens to escalate global financial instability.
Global supply chains face renewed pressure from Japan's economic shock, and the effects are spreading far beyond Asia. Companies reliant on Japanese exports, components, and technology are now confronting delays, higher costs, and disrupted production schedules.
Central banks brace for emergency interventions as volatility surges, moving quickly to stabilize markets and prevent a domino effect of financial panic. Interest rates, currency swaps, and liquidity injections are all under consideration as officials scramble to restore confidence.
Businesses, investors, and governments alike are monitoring every fluctuation, knowing that any misstep could deepen instability and prolong the economic turbulence already rippling across multiple continents.
The risk of simultaneous geopolitical and financial crises rises sharply as Russia's military setbacks collide with Japan's currency collapse, creating a perfect storm of uncertainty that reverberates across global markets.
World leaders warn that the dual shock could redefine global stability, prompting emergency meetings, urgent policy discussions, and heightened diplomatic activity. Economies are bracing for cascading effects, from volatile stock markets to disrupted trade flows, while investors scramble to hedge against compounding risks.
Every nation, corporation, and financial institution is now forced to reassess vulnerabilities, adjust strategies, and anticipate a new reality where conventional stability can no longer be assumed. This is the moment to open your eyes.
Russia's military setbacks and Japan's collapsing currency aren't separate stories. They are twin shocks rocking the entire world. Every market swing, every political tremor, every decision made in the next hours and days will affect you directly. Don't turn away. Don't wait for someone else to explain it. Stay alert, stay informed, and understand the stakes for yourself, your family, and the global future. This is USA World Reports, and we are here to cut through the chaos, show you the truth, and empower you to act with clarity. Thank you for tuning in. If you want to stay ahead of these global shifts, hit that subscribe button, share this with everyone you know, and stay locked in. The world isn't slowing down, and neither should you. Stay informed, stay alert, and be ready for what comes next.